John Bercow is a former British politician who was the Speaker of the House of Commons. John, it's genuinely a pleasure to host you here on my programme.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to trying to answer your questions.
So I just want to start off, even before I get into any of the questions, I just want to start off by thanking you. The only reason why I'm actually involved in politics currently is because I saw videos of you as Speaker of the House of Commons. I never actually met you, but I saw videos of you as Speaker, and they were always very entertaining, very educational, and always very, very iconically British. So that definitely inspired me to come in. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I will take that as a compliment and put it in the bank and earn some interest on it, Ellie. And I'm delighted to have had a positive effect on you. If that's motivated you in some way, well, that's a result from the vantage point of any politician, and I welcome it. And I look forward now to our interaction today.
Please do take it as a compliment. Okay, so let's start off by talking about the war in Israel. Since Hamas's horrific attack on October 7th, Israel and Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has retaliated, and now tens of thousands of people have died in Gaza or been killed in Gaza. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on Prime Minister Netanyahu's actions?
Well, I'm sorry to say that I think Prime Minister Netanyahu's actions are utterly deplorable and cannot credibly be defended in any way. I should emphasize, and I do, for the avoidance of doubt, that the Hamas attack on October the 7th was horrific, bestial, and appalling. The world was outraged. The world sympathized with Israel being on the receiving end of that appalling terrorism. Yes, however, there is a but. Not a but about the denunciation of that terrorism, but a but in terms of Israel's response. And I've just said what I have about Prime Minister Netanyahu and the policy of the Israeli government, which I think is atrocious and inexcusable. And I suppose the particular point I want to make to you, Eddie, is that I think that however strongly people in some quarters may support Israel, and I support Israel's right to exist, just as I very strongly support the right of the Palestinian people to have an autonomous homeland as well, Israel cannot be the exclusive arbiter of what it is legitimate to do to defend itself. I sometimes feel that the extreme right in Israel and some of their apologists around the world think that because of either the Holocaust, the most atrocious crime in human history, or because of the events of last October, Israel should be given a free pass to do what it wants by way of response. And my answer to that is an unequivocal no. It cannot have a free pass. What we need, in my opinion, is an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and unimpeded access for the supply of humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. Ultimately, there has to be a peaceful solution to the conflict between Israel and Palestinians. If Netanyahu believes that he can just bomb Hamas out of existence, that seems to me to be both wrong and delusional.
What in particular do you disagree with that you call Bibi Netanyahu's actions deplorable? Is there any specific point, or is it just how in general they've retaliated with the bombings?
I'll tell you what it is. It's the indiscriminate response by Israel, the notion that a military victory can be achieved and that collateral damage in the form of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of innocent men, women, and children losing their lives can somehow be accepted or excused. In my opinion, it cannot be. I want once again to emphasize that I believe strongly in the right of Israel to exist and in the right of the Palestinian people to enjoy their own homeland. I would like there to be a two-state solution. The prospect of that two-state solution seems to be receding by the day, if not in fact by the hour. And insofar as that's true, insofar as the prospect of peace seems more remote than ever before, a huge share of the blame for that lies with the Netanyahu government. I know very large numbers of people around the world who sympathize with the right of Israel to exist, who are appalled and embarrassed by the behavior of the Netanyahu government. That behavior has to change, or the government will have to change. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of slaughter ahead. And that is the most crying shame. What happened in October was wrong, but the Israeli government's response has been wrong. And I can't say fairer than that. And I think a lot of people know that the Netanyahu government's response has been wrong. And it's about time he got that message.
You said you really want Israel to have their own state, but also the Palestinians to have their own autonomous state and their own autonomous right to exist. Do you think Israel can have a peace deal and a peace negotiation as it is, or do they need to, or is it possible to do it with Hamas? Or if not, do they need to wipe out Hamas first to get to that peace deal and to get to that
wipe out
peace?
Hamas is, I think, unrealistic. I think the truth of the matter is you can deal with terrorists where you find them, but the notion that there will be a military victory first and then you get round to sitting around the negotiating table seems to me to misread history. In the end, you have to have a negotiated solution. And a negotiated solution, in essence, involves some sort of land for peace deal. I am not an expert on this subject. I've just looked at what's happened in other parts of the world and indeed very close to home in terms of the conflict in Ireland. And there, people have had to accept something less than they would originally have wanted in return for a cessation of hostilities. It's no good people saying that they want a two-state solution unless they're prepared to act to facilitate it. There isn't going, I think, to be peace so long as there is settlement building in the West Bank and so long as Israel behaves in the way she's behaving in Gaza. And there isn't going to be peace so long as there are terrorist attacks on Israel. People of very conflicting, in some cases, palpably opposite views have to be prepared to sit down and negotiate. And beyond that, I have nothing to add.
Do you think Bibi should resign?
Well, the politics of another country is a matter for that other country. If you're asking me, do I entertain a high opinion of him? Do I respect the way in which he's behaving? No. But I don't think a British politician or a former British politician saying what a politician abroad should do is likely to have any effect at all. I don't so kid myself. The Israeli people ultimately must come to a view about who they wish to be their government, but I'm sure they'll want to take account of what people around the world are saying. And I think that the fact that the US administration, which has traditionally been almost regardless of party, very sympathetic to Israel, is so critical, should frankly cause politicians in Israel to reflect on the way in which they're conducting themselves.
Okay, so moving on to UK politics for quite briefly, what do you think about the upcoming election? Do you think Rishi Sunak is going to get hammered?
The short answer is yes. I think the Conservative government is due. And I think that's true for a number of reasons. First of all, I think they have made a royal mess of matters since Boris Johnson's victory in 2019. I think to have 3 prime ministers in one parliament is extraordinary. And you had in Boris Johnson, I think, almost without question, the most corrupt prime minister in modern times. You had in Liz Truss somebody who was frankly simply not up to it, and had an ambition that was simply not matched by her ability. That's my roundabout way of saying she was the most incompetent prime minister in living memory. And you have in Rishi Sunak somebody who's trying to pick up the pieces, but who is hopefully out of touch with public opinion, appears to be delaying the inevitable defeat by refusing to call an election, and intensely irritating people in the process. So I think on the one hand, the government has just run out of road, run out of ideas, and run out of time. And I think on the other hand, the Labour opposition doesn't scare people. It doesn't frighten people. It doesn't alarm people. And sometimes you hear people talk about which politician is or isn't charismatic. Ellie, I put it to you that what people in Britain now want is a period of solid, responsible, competent government. They haven't had it from the Conservatives. And after now 14 years of crass ineptitude, starvation of public services, economic incompetence, and growing disparities between the haves and have-nots, people would like some sense of responsible government, a commitment to fairness, and a new set of ministers with the get up and go and the public service commitment to start to turn this country around. And that's why, in my estimation, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party will win the election, probably by a very substantial majority, but let's see.
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining, John.